Hello and welcome to another live stream. It's been a few weeks since we've done this, and it feels good to be back in the driver's seat and pushing this channel forward. Today we're going to be talking about, if I can find my notes here. Today we're going to be talking about for this live broadcast is buying hardware for Linux. This is something I've touched on a little bit before. Ooh, itchy nose. And let's see. I've touched on this a little bit before, and I wanted to do something a little more formal with the subject because things have changed so much in the 25 years I've been using Linux. And in some ways things are easier today. In some ways things are nearly as challenging. So let's go ahead and talk through some news items first. And then we can get into the main event. Okay, so let me bring up share my screen. I'll do that. All right, so the first item I wanted to bring up, because I know some of my audience is into the retro space, whether it's retro computers or retro video games or a combination thereof. I happened across this website on one of the news sites I was looking at, and I thought, hey, this might be worth mentioning. So, floppydisccom still sells new and used tested floppy disks. And so you can get those not only in a 3.5 inch 10 pack, but they've also got options for 5.25 inch and 8 inch floppy disks. Plus, if you're looking for something as a prop, you can get promotional non-working disks. And a 25 pack of 8 inch discs is $25. So you can get 55.25 inch discs, non-working with labels, for $10. So something to think about if you are dabbling in that space. If you've got an old computer that you want to transfer or make copies of discs you've already got, this might be a worthy website to check out and see if they can do anything for you. Okay, my second news item of the day. I was reading beta news and I came across this article. And I'll go ahead and drop this into chat. Good morning, David. So Microsoft Teams for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux insecurely stores authentication tokens in unprotected clear text. So I'm not the biggest Microsoft fan out there. I will be the first to admit that. But this gives me even more ammunition for not wanting to use Microsoft Teams for anything. In fact, we don't at the library. But yeah. Give me an open source product that does the same thing like Jitsi Meet any day, and I'll be a happy camper. For those not familiar, Jitsi Meet is a free application. Instead of generating a numeric code for your meeting like some other platforms, this generates an often humorous grouping of random words, and all you have to do is click Start Meeting. It's completely web browser based. There's no application involved, and they have a software as a service version called 8x8, and it's $1 a month. So yeah, Jitsi and 8x8 by extension have seen a huge amount of development happen during the dark times, and lots of features, lots of security features, and lots of testing by a lot of people have gone into these products. And for the WordPress meetup group that I co-host each month, we use Jitsi, and we've used Jitsi pretty much right through the time when we've been meeting virtually instead of in person. So the price is certainly right. And again, it's an open source thing, and it is available such that you could host your own Jitsi server on DigitalOcean, on Amazon AWS, on whatever cloud service makes your heart happy. And then you've got full control over it, relatively speaking. You know, it's one of those things that a lot of times people underestimate the time involved maintaining something like that. And in all honesty, I've been guilty of this in the past myself. You know, I'll start off doing really well maintaining something, and then, 6 months goes by and I find that I'm not keeping it as updated as I'd like. And usually that's when I destroy the VM and think about using a hosted service. But I have very few needs for a platform like this on an ongoing basis. So it's been an interesting ride watching how Jitsi has matured as a platform during like I said, the dark times. All right. Let's see. Sorry it's late. Watching YouTube video telling the life story of my number one hero, the Battle of Gettysburg. John Buford had relatives fighting for the South in that war. All right, I won't hold that against you. My relatives fought for the North. I'm a damn Yankee through and through. Oh, still got a little bit of a cough left, but I am feeling much, much better than I was a week ago. Okay, so what else do we have for news items? Well, Fedora 37 is now in beta. This was released on the article is from the 13th. So if you are a Fedora fan and want to get to testing some of that Fedora 37 GNOME 43 goodness out, it is available, and there's also an image for the Raspberry Pi 4. So that is, if you've got a Raspberry Pi 4, you certainly can't buy them right now unless you want to pay scalper prices. But yeah, I might have to take a look at Fedora 37, maybe during the beta, maybe after it's released. But I am still, I won't say traumatized, but I still remember the bad experiences I had with Red Hat based distributions early on, and once I moved to Debian based distributions, I've never really looked back, not for any great length of time anyways. But Fedora 37 is going to be interesting to a lot of people nonetheless. Let's see. The next item on our list is ipfire. They have released a new version. This is a Linux-based firewall/router distribution. So you could take a commodity x86 or x64 box and build up your own firewall. Not as well known as something like pfSense, which is based on the BSD kernel. But ipfire has been around for a large number of years, and it is a mature product. If you're one of those people like me that likes to tinker, you may find something of value here. Their latest release is version 2.27, core update 170. So, lots of features. They've got some add-ons. They've got a web proxy built in. So, it's one of those products that is definitely worth some time checking out. They've got an active blog. This was released on Friday. So you can look back on that. In the community tab, they've got some forums, and you can ask questions and all that fun stuff that comes with that. All right, and then the last news item is Kuzali SME server. This is a product that's existed under a couple of different names. It was originally eSmith. and it came out in 1999. It is based on CentOS Linux. The current version is supported until 2024-ish, I believe. At which time I would imagine that they will have a plan in place or have started a migration to using Rocky Linux or Navy Linux or a couple of the other ones as possible backends underlying their interface on it, to continue support into the future. Because, as we all know, CentOS, as it was originally conceived, no longer exists. They have, once Red Hat and of course IBM gained control of CentOS, they have changed how it's structured and how it's released, and now it's more of a development environment than a recompiled version of Red Hat Enterprise, which is what it started as. So, just food for thought. I'm curious in a lot of ways how some of these platforms that were built on top of CentOS are going to sustain themselves going forward, just because of the way the nature of CentOS has changed over the past couple of years. All right, let's jump over to chat and see where we're at. All right. Here, those same relatives generation before fought the British in the war that established this country. Very nice. Okay, so to anybody else that's watching out there that's not in the chat, welcome. We are going to take a dive into our main event now. And this is a topic that I've talked about a little bit before, but it's worth re-examining every now and again. So, as I mentioned, I've been running Linux originally on the desktop. It later morphed into a lot of server applications, various projects and labs. I've been running some version of Linux in some capacity for 25 years. And you know, it was very much the wild, wild west 25 years ago when it came to Linux, and when it came to the internet as well, for that matter. So, you know, it was one of those things that it started buying a book that had different Linux distributions on the covers, inside, front, and back covers. And the machine I started off with was a 486 DX4120, which was a hand-me-down machine. And I managed to make this thing work. And for a few years, that was my Linux machine. Now, you know, contrary to the experience of a lot of people, I didn't come directly from Windows or Mac OS. I was a product of the home computer era, running a number of different home computers over the years, most notably the Tandy Color Computer series, and then the Commodore Amiga. So when, Commodore went belly up in 1994, and I ran my Amigas until, basically the end of the 90s, and put them away, and, you know, uh, moved on to Linux. Now, there was a very, very short period in there where I did evaluate Windows 98, and it was still hit and miss with long file names. It still had a pretty lousy command line interface for all intents and purposes. Coming from the Amiga, which had many Unix commands ported to it, and then going to a more or less DOS type system, I did not see it as an upgrade. And the Amiga OS had preemptive multitasking, and Windows 98 was still cooperative multitasking. It was very prone to crashing still in those days. But it's been one of those things that I spent a lot of this time running Linux. And so, it doesn't take a person very long to discover that you can't just go into a big box store and just grab any piece of hardware off the shelf and expect it to run with Linux. Much like those home computers of the 80s and 90s, you've got to do a little research. You've got to put in some time and effort to figure out what piece of software or hardware is going to work for you. And really today we're focusing mostly on the hardware part. And so I wanted to give a little bit of a recap of some of the lessons I've learned in buying hardware over the last 25 years, much of which was intended at purchase time to be used on a Linux machine. Or at the very least, I wanted something that was supported on not only Windows, but at least one other platform. And this led me to some particular brands that have a track record of working well. So I'm going to start with printers. And let me bring up my screen again. Were one of the first pieces of hardware that I bought that I knew was going to be suitable for use under Linux. And this is because in the first couple of months of 2001, so we're talking 21 years ago, my last inkjet printer, and I'd been through a number of these in the 90s, my last inkjet printer came to an early death. And I think that was because of a lightning storm that had passed through, but I can't be 100% sure on that. So I set out to ditch inkjet printers and get myself a laser printer. And the laser printer I bought at the time was a Brother, and it served me very well. I ran that thing until 2008, so 7 years, and then I gave it away. And this other person continued to run it for a number of years after that. I actually ended up purchasing that printer at a big box office store. And they actually had the Linux Penguin logo on the box. And this was not at all a common thing in 2001. So I felt very comfortable buying Brother. I've since bought 2 other laser printers. Excuse me. Both of those are Brother as well. The first one I bought after the original one was a color laser. And I discovered I don't use color that often anymore. And the second printer I bought that I still find myself using every week or two is another Brother again, and it's a duplex printer. And that was one of those purchases. I got it on a closeout sale at a big box store, and it was like 40 or 50% off. So you know, it was one of those things that it was all good. Let's see. Recently found the box in my garage with my Atari 1040 ST. Somewhat moldy though, so I need to clean it before I plug it in. First Intel PC, of course, a clone was the 4650. If there's anyone watching, please hit like. Yep, thank you for that suggestion, David. I think I once mentioned my first PC printer was a dot matrix printer with a ribbon like a typewriter. Yep. So, well, my family's first computer was a Coleco Atom computer, and so that had a daisy wheel printer, and then we ended up with another daisy wheel printer for a Tandy color computer, and then I ended up buying a dot matrix printer back in the day when Radio Shack still did layaway. So yes, I was doing layaway on computer hardware when I was in high school. But yeah, Brother printers have served me very well over the years, and at this point, I know there are others that are supported under Linux, but I've got a 20 plus year loyalty to the brand at this point. If I buy another printer, I can't imagine myself buying anything other than Brother. These have just been such workhorses for me. Okay, so another type of hardware that I've bought more than once over the years is scanners. Now, I've got flatbed scanner, I've got a document scanner, sheet fed document scanner. I've got a portable scanner, which is kind of an exception to my rule, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I've got a book scanner that's supposed to be arriving on Tuesday. And of course, I will be doing a review on that once I have it and have had a chance to use it. But by and large, I've stuck with Epson for scanners. Now, Hi Shack. Epson has a little bit of an issue. Doesn't prevent their scanners from working, but the first Epson scanner I bought was back in the 90s. I was running a Commodore Amiga at the time. And so, one of the things I did was go to not only to trade shows, and this was all after the demise of Commodore, mind you, but I also, once I had internet access, excuse me, in 96, I would correspond with the developers of various software. And so when I went to buy my first scanner, I of course wanted to know what scanners are supported on the Amiga. And at that point, it was Epson. Epson was the go-to brand for this particular software that I was using, the name of which escapes me at the moment. I do remember the name of the guy, though. His name was Kermit Woodall. And he was very kind to me and sent me on this journey. And as such, I've pretty much stuck with Epson scanners over the years. I've got two now. I've got the document scanner and I've got a flatbed scanner. Now, getting back to the issue I was alluding to that Canon has, or excuse me, Epson has. Their software has not changed that much in the last 25, 28 years. I've seen it on every version of Windows, starting with 3.0 or 3.1, up to current versions. They also have a tendency, like a lot of scanner manufacturers, to stop supporting scanners when a newer version of Windows or Mac OS comes out. So my way of correcting this error of their ways is using this piece of software called ViewScan. And they've got over 7,100 scanners that are supported. Okay, now I took some flack on this before because they have changed since I originally purchased the software. They have changed the way they do payments. You can do a one-time payment. The one-time payment gets you updates for 1 year. I'm grandfathered into the old plan. I get unlimited updates until the day I die, or until they cease developing the software. But for $99.95, you can use this on 4 computers You've got all your professional options. You've got document feeders available, and you've got film and slide scanners available. And there's no limit to the number of different scanners you can use for that $99.95. So I have no problem recommending this. If somebody else has a problem and they want to use something else, more power to them. It's a free world. And I'm not your benevolent dictator. Now, the scanners I've got are already a few years old. The chances of this software adding any new features to those scanners is slim and none. So even if I were purchasing this today, unless I were buying a brand new scanner, I wouldn't really be worrying a lot about the updates. This is a piece of software that does not start and stay running in the background. This is something that you close it and it's closed. It's not keeping any processes going. Your mileage may vary. I will say that open source scanning software has got better over the years. Is it as reliable as ViewScan? The jury's out. I haven't tested it in depth lately, so I can't say for sure. But this is an option that you've got. And if you're a Windows or Mac OS user, this works there as well. And so if you, like me, want to have one piece of software that you can run across multiple computers that may cover multiple operating systems, this is a reasonable choice. Do I wish they would have kept the old licensing? Sure. However, this is still reasonable. And it's certainly not, you know, pay $40 a month for the rest of your life type of subscription. If you don't want to update it, you don't have to update it. And you can still continue using it. You just don't get new features. Okay. I had to do that just because of the garbage comments I had last time I covered this software. Okay, let's check chat one more time and see where we're at. My first scanner circa 1995 was a QMS scanner that used a SCSI interface. Still have that ISA SCSI scanner. Oh yes. That first Epson I bought was a SCSI scanner as well. So all right. Good morning, Chris. Welcome. All right. So, next on my list, Wi-Fi cards. Okay. So, this is one area where things still are a little trickier than they probably should be. But in the last 18 months or so, I guess my go-to chipset has been Intel based. EX200, I think it's EX200. So I know some of the newer ones. I'm thinking of AX200. Okay, so there are several cards in the series by different manufacturers that all use the Intel AX2XX chipset. Now, for Linux use, I have picked up a couple of, I'm not sure it's this particular brand, but it's a similar card. It's got an Intel wireless chipset on it, actually made for a laptop, on a carrier card for PCI Express. And these are just nothing short of amazing. So the AX210 I'd have to double check on. The ones I've got, I believe, are the AX200. And they are just plug and play, drop in and go with any sort of desktop Linux distribution. You may still have a little bit more work to do with a server-based distro if you're going like a CentOS or a Debian, a straight Debian, or even Ubuntu server. You may have to play with the network manager CLI to get that going, or go old school and edit some configuration files. Not the worst thing in the world. My first Wi-Fi card was 802.11b, and it was a PCMCIA card, and that was 1999 2000 ish. And what was it? It was Mandrake Linux I was running at the time, and trying to get this thing running under Linux. It was quite the adventure. But since, internet stores weren't what they are today, you couldn't just go and buy your Orinoco card to just plug in and have it work. Because the Orinoco, I think it was Orinoco Gold or something. Yeah. One of these guys was like the reference card that was supported in Linux at the time. And yes, this is over 20 years ago. And it's still selling for $33 on eBay. Excuse me. But generally speaking, Intel is going to be supported pretty well for Wi-Fi on Linux. So there are other things that are much easier these days. Barcode scanners that I've talked about before on the channel, they're seen as a keyboard. You plug them in and you go. The only configuration that ends up getting done with a barcode scanner is you scan the barcodes that are in the manual and it changes behavior. No configuration files, no nothing. you just plug in and go. Okay. Webcams. Another thing, another device type that it is going to be very well supported as long as the manufacturer stuck to the specifications. Now, to take that to the next step, this camera that I'm using now, which I just got a couple of days ago, this Nexgo Iris N1000, not only does it have USB, it's also got HDMI. So this is going to be guaranteed to work on a Linux system just by using a USB capture card, if nothing else. I have yet to plug this into a Linux box, but that is coming. Okay, so video capture cards. Generally, the USB cards aren't going to be an issue on Linux. Generally. My USB capture cards are from a company called Mirabox. And so you can get a 4K version. They've got a 1080p version that I started with a few years ago. And they're generally decent priced. They work with OBS. They work with, whatever else you might throw at it. And, they're just decent cards. Definitely worthwhile to look at. I've not had any issues running Mirabox cards under Linux, or under Mac OS. I've tried a couple of them on Windows even, but it's really worth my time to test on that platform when I can do more justice to the other two. So, again, something that is worthwhile to take a look at. The other USB DAC. So you can get even something fairly inexpensive like this, Creative Sound Blaster X, and then pair that with something like Volumio or Daph File, and have yourself a headless media server that, well, audio specifically, that runs into your surround system. I just recently set up Volumio on a Dell Optiplex 3020, I believe. It's actually sitting in my living room behind me. And that is feeding directly into my surround receiver. Now, are there higher quality DACs out there? Sure. Will most of them be seen under Linux? That's a reasonable assumption. But, even some of these very inexpensive ones, and I did order one of these, I'm pretty sure here. Yep. I haven't tested this. But it says right in the description, compatible with Mac Mini, Mac Pro, PlayStation 4 and 5, Windows, Linux laptop, PC computer, Raspberry Pi. So for $12, you can have a digital to analog converter to push out of one of those audio servers. Now, just as an aside, the reason I've got both Volumio and Daph File running on my network, I use Daph File for ripping CDs because that has the CD ripper built in. And I use Volumio on the machine hooked to the surround system. Once my CD ripping project is complete, I will probably shut down the VM for Daph File and just kind of let it sit. And then, the next time a new version comes out, we'll update it to the new version. So, again, over the last 25 years, it went from the more expensive, more stable type devices that would have Linux support to even, now we've got $12 DACs. All right. Couple other things. Graphics cards. Generally speaking, AMD cards are better supported under Linux. The NVIDIA hardware is getting better support. They've made some changes to the way they do their drivers, and that's going to get better integrated into the kernel. Excuse me. But probably for the next year, AMD cards are going to still be better supported. It's just one of those situations. Of course, the first graphics card I ran under Linux was, I'm pretty sure, a 3DFX Voodoo card. So that takes me back a while. All right. And then once you get into more special purpose hardware, again, this is going to be one of those places where, excuse me, you're going to have to do a little research. And it may be that for a period of time, you'll have to run Windows to support a particular special purpose piece of hardware. And that just kind of goes with the territory. You can't expect every obscure piece of hardware to be supported overnight on Linux. And, things are moving at a much faster clip today than they were in, 2000, 97. But, there are still things that you have to do your fair share of research in order to reasonably expect that they're going to work. But, the flip side of that is there are pieces of hardware that don't work out of the box with Windows these days either. And the Steam Deck gaming console, handheld gaming console, is one of those examples. People had to do a lot of work when they received theirs in order to get Windows running on these devices, because Valve put this device out running Linux by default. And they did that on purpose, because you don't have to pay Redmond, Washington licensing fees to build and sell devices that don't have Windows. All right, let's check the chat. Give my voice a minute to rest. I had an HP scanner connected to my laptop with a SCSI PCMCIA card, ridiculously fat cable for that adapter. Oh, yes. Mandrake was awesome until I discovered OpenSUSE. PCMCA I just found in Google. They had crazy pigtail cables you needed to attach. Broadcom drivers are still a pain for Linux. Yes. Supposed to be open now, but not quite everywhere yet. I purposely avoid Broadcom equipment. I will say that one other brand that's worth mentioning, and every Linux guy that I know of has used these cards over the years, are Wi-Fi cards from a company called Alfa, A-L-F-A. And these are they've got a Wi-Fi Raspberry Pi hat. Interesting. These are Wi-Fi adapters that, well, some of the older ones anyways, were being highly recommended for Linux. And in fact, Darren Kitchen of Hack5 fame there we go. Had sold some of these devices in the shop, in the hack shop before. And so you know, I kind of snatched onto the idea of using these early on. The first one I ordered was it from a company called Data Alliance, and I'll throw this in chat as well. But this was one of the earliest companies that I found that had information on their website about whether a particular card would work on Linux. And so, for instance, I know this one here because I've got a few of these, or I've had a few of these over the years. And this has a minimum purchase of 9 units. These are 802.11n adapters, $15 a piece. And they are usable under Linux and Windows, and they were usable on Mac OS up to version like 10.10 or something. But yeah, these adapters are generally pretty high quality, and some of these are long range as well. So this one here, oh, this is the original long range. This is a G unit. We don't want that. That's pretty old at this point. But yeah, some of these BGN replaces blah blah blah, and a lot of these they do list Linux as being a supported platform. Some of these they are nice enough to list the chipset that they use on them, which makes it easier to figure out if it's going to be supported. So, you know, it's just one of those things where you still have to do a little bit of homework. For me, that's always been part of the fun of using Linux. And, you know, other people have their own ideas of fun. Part of the reason that I was so determined to go into IT is because I knew it was an area where I was going to be forced throughout my career to continue learning. And I guess when you want to stop learning, then you go into management, right? Um, that's always been the joke, you know. You go into sales or you go into management, and then you don't have to do as much learning. So doesn't look like they list the chipset for this particular one, but this is up to 802.11ac. I do like the fact that they tell you it's got detachable RPSMA female connector antennas. So, you know, another resource, I don't know as though I've shared a data alliance on this channel before, but definitely worth a look. And they've got a lot of other things like Ubiquity products. They've got signal boosters. They've got routers and access points, mounts for antennas and gear, lightning surge protectors, Ethernet cables and fiber, outdoor enclosures that are waterproof. Excuse me. The whole 9 yards. Definitely a worthy vendor to buy from, and I purchased from them several times in the last 20 odd years. So yeah, at a time, this was they were an Alfa distributor back in 2007. So you know, at one point in time, I could get these Wi-Fi adapters from Data Alliance, and I couldn't reliably get them from Bezos Mart, shall we say. But you know, it's one of those things where you just you learn as you go. All right. To wrap things up today, I caught a video from Learn Linux TV and one other guy that I don't remember his name in it. Excuse me. And they brought up the idea of strategies for buying laptops that will work with Linux. And this is a bit of a tricky situation, but if you go into it with your eyes wide open, it's not as bad as people might make it out. So, as a rule of thumb, you can pick up most any laptop that is approximately 2 years of age and have it work with Linux. Again, a general rule of thumb. Now, things have changed over the last 20 years. I bought my first laptop in 1999 from a company called ProStar. And they are one of those, what do you call them, an ODM, original device manufacturer. They do designs and build devices, which often get, the designs get purchased and customized and resold under other names. So at the time, this was, back in 99, it was between, for me, it was between ProStar and there was one other brand that was the same type of thing, and the name escapes me at the moment. But this first laptop I bought was an AMD K62 400 megahertz laptop. It came preloaded with Windows 98. And it took me about 3 months of playing with Windows 98 before I decided I want to run Linux. And run Linux I did. But those were the days when you had the PCMCIA slots. You had no built-in Wi-Fi. You had just a more bare bones, more open architecture laptop. And they were also about 2 inches thick and weighed about a lot. And so just to illustrate how things have changed there on that front, let me open up a new tab here. You've got the HP Dev 1. It comes preloaded with Linux. Pop OS, in fact. For $1,100 plus tax. You've got, if you want to go a little bit higher in the food chain, you've got System 76 laptops. They'll sell you pretty much any laptop you want to buy at any price range. You've got Tuxedo Labs laptops. No. Tuxedo computers. Again, you can get these preloaded with Linux. System 76 is based out of the US. Tuxedo, while they ship, I believe, worldwide, they are based out of Europe. You've got Star Labs. And their Starbook series. Okay. Again, you can get these with Linux preloaded. There's also the framework laptop, which you can get this as a kit type build, where you assemble your own laptop and you can get it without an OS if you would like, and it will run Linux. And so you've also got the choice of going to ePay and searching for System 76, and you could buy a used machine from one of these brands that came preloaded with Linux. So here's a 10th gen Intel i5 System 76 Galago Pro for $550. And again, look at that, no Windows keys. Isn't that a thing of beauty? You can get a deal on something if you can't afford to buy new or don't want to buy new. Star Labs laptop. You can probably find the same thing here. Star Labs, Starlight MK4 Linux laptop, 960 gig solid state. And this just has an Intel Pentium in it. Soon to be known as Intel Processor, because they're doing away with Pentium and Celeron branding. And that's got Ubuntu preloaded on it. Only selling to find a new home, fund a new home server. Since I've got 15 computers, something had to go. Sounds like some of us. Or sounds like me anyways. I have got too many computers. Paid over $600 for it, which is a great value. You can get an even better value now. But again, it's a Pentium. At the same time, for $325, not the worst deal out there for a nice small laptop. And you're able to support, maybe not directly, but secondhand, you're able to support the Linux ecosystem by buying a machine that never had Windows on it. So yeah, you can search for other things on here too. And that's kind of where I wanted to wrap things up today. It's been let me dig into my quote bank. To quote Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been running Linux for 25 years. It's been a wild ride, and it's been a lot of fun, and I can't imagine that I would have learned nearly as much if I had stuck with just running Windows and not playing and dabbling and building labs and just having fun with Linux on a machine or multiple machines over the years. Hopefully many of you that are seeing this video either now live or some point in the future are in the same boat. You're of the same mindset. You are striving to learn something new and keep computing exciting. And I hate to say this, but Windows has kind of been boring for a while. Other than the next newest piece of malware or, how you're going to have something crash or decide not to update. It really has got kind of boring. And that's why, even though I dabbled the end of last year, the beginning of this year, in making a few Windows videos. My heart wasn't in it, and the audience wasn't that into it either. So I stopped. I went cold turkey on the Windows side of things, more or less. And although you'll still see mention of Windows every now and again, or testing something on Windows, usually as a part of a test suite where I tested also on Linux and Mac OS. I don't have much to do with Windows other than when I'm at work. And even there, I have implemented some Linuxy mindset approaches to Windows. The new computers I'm rolling out, I'm using Winget. Excuse me. To install software. And holy crow, that's shaved a bunch of time off for setting up new machines. It's it's been a great experience with Linux. Yes, there are some frustrations along the way, but I've learned from those frustrations and make better decisions after having gone through those frustrations. So, you know, I'm glad to be back and doing live streams. My voice is starting to give out, so we'll wrap this up here pretty quick. But thank you for everybody that came out. Hopefully I still pull out that ace in my sleeve every now and again and share some good information with people, some things that people may not have known or resources people may not have known about. That's part of what makes this YouTube journey worthwhile to me is, drawing upon my experiences and passing them along. I never so much had a mentor to speak of when I got started. And so, if my videos can act as sort of that little bit of input, little bit of, making suggestions and helping people down a road, then I feel like I've done my job and I've paid it forward, and hopefully people will have an easier time finding things because of some of the struggles that I've gone through, and they will in turn pay it forward to the next person and document things that they've gone through and struggled with and found solutions for, because one of the big criticisms of the Linux community over the years, and this has gone on for nearly as long as there's been a Linux community, is that people aren't necessarily the most welcoming to newcomers. And I try to be as welcoming as possible. I like having new people on the channel, leaving comments. It would be easy for me to do to people what was done to me in 1999 and say RTFM, read the effing manual. Hit the documentation. My approach is that for any given comment, I'll spend a maximum of 10 minutes. There aren't a lot that require that amount of time investment, but I will usually add some sort of value and then point them at documentation where they can find out more. Because a lot of times people don't share everything, every detail that you would want or need in order to solve a problem. And that is wherein my frustration lies. If you write about a piece of software, tell me what platform you're running it on. Are you running it on Windows, Mac OS, Linux? What version of Linux? And what have you tried for your troubleshooting? I'm not a developer. I'm not officially involved with the software that I do reviews on this channel. And, I will try to help, but pointing you at forums is honestly going to get you further faster than me trying to go back and forth with you and ask additional questions to try to pry that information from you. Let's wrap this up for the day, and we will do this again next week. Hopefully the cough will be gone by then. Thank you to everybody that came out, to people that participated in chat. Wasn't quite as lively today as it has been some Sundays, but I do appreciate everybody that's been hanging out in chat and leaving some comments, and has been on a parallel journey to me, running Linux a lot of these years. So there's more to come from this channel. There's more testing to be done with this webcam, and I definitely want to put it through its paces and excuse me, test it under Linux. But I think my voice is about shot right now, so thank you everybody again for coming out. If you haven't done so, please like the video, and if you're seeing this after the fact, leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up, send some sort of feedback, let me know you were here. Head over to the community page as well, and participate in some of the polls and different questions I ask over there, and we can make this together a little bit more interactive community around this channel and for the Linux community and beyond. So on that note, thank you everybody for coming out. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.